Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome if you're new. I hope you're all doing well and welcome back to a brand new video. Hi guys, in today's video, this video idea was inspired by Chloe. I saw Chloe do this video and I was like, oh my god, this would be so interesting to try and narrow down. And that is, if I could only keep 10 books, what would those books be? And I think it'll be really, really interesting as well if you guys pause this video now, if you watch my videos regularly, if you pause this video and actually try and predict which 10 books I'm going to be discussing in this video. Because I think that would be really, really interesting to see kind of what books I talk about most on my channel compared to what books I'd actually want to keep. And I kind of went down the avenue with this video of like 10 books I want to keep in my personal collection for sentimental values or books that I want to reread, rather than like, there's no more books in this world, these are the only 10 books left and these are the books that you can only ever read. For one example, I was like, I really, really want to keep a volume of Heartstopper, but then again I was like, I can read that online. So I'm kind of not discounting this list as these are the only books I'm ever allowed to read ever again. These are just the 10 books that I would want to keep in my collection for sentimental values if I had to get rid of every single other book on my bookshelf currently. So without further ado, thank you, Chloe, for this idea, and let's get started. I hope you guys have made your predictions, because the first book on my 10 books that I would want to keep is Half a World Away by Mike Gale. I absolutely adore this book. It's one of my favourite books of all time, so it was an easy choice on this list. I think the first like 5 or 6 positions were really easy to fill, and then it got a little tricky on kind of which books to cut and which books to continue to keep in the list. But this one 100% made the cut. I absolutely adore this book. I adore Mike Gale's writing style, and I could easily reread and reread and reread this book until the end of time. And this book basically follows our 2 main characters, and if you guys know me, I love dual perspectives. It follows our 2 main characters, Noah and Kerry, and they are half brother and sister, but they don't know each other exist, and you follow both of their timelines as both of their timelines interweave. And it's about found family and coming together as one unit, and it's the most emotional, heartwarming, heart-wrenching book, and I absolutely adore this book so much. I reread it last year and gave it 5 stars, because when I first read it I only gave it like a 3 star. I was like, it was fine, but I knew deep down somewhere that I was going to love this book on the second reread, and my instincts were correct, because this is now one of my favourite books of all time. The next one, if you guys know me, I would say that about every single book, to be fair, but this one 100%. I feel like I am the sole movement behind this book, and the reason why most people have read this book is I feel like because of me, but that could be really self-centered. But I do feel like that is the case, because every time you guys message me on Instagram or on Twitter saying you've picked up this book because of me, off my recommendation, and I'm like, I hope you guys love it because I don't want to like disappoint you guys. Olive, there was no way in hell that this book wasn't making the cut. I absolutely love this book. I could reread it back to back for multiple days, and without having this book on my bookshelves, I would be very, very sad. And once again, this list is for books I personally want to keep in my collection, rather than 10 books I could only ever read for the rest of my life. Although that would be an interesting video and definitely a different take, and there'll definitely be different books on that list. So that could be an interesting video idea. So maybe I'll do that. I don't need to go into too much depth about this book because you guys know how much I love it. You guys probably know what it's about. But if you guys are new to my channel and you don't know what Olive is, it's an adult contemporary book following our main character, Olive, who is trying to navigate the society of not wanting kids, wanting kids, and her friends kind of finally getting to a time in their lives where they're settling down, they're moving to the suburbs, and they're having kids. And Olive is in a crossroads of her life. She has just broken up with her long-time boyfriend because he wants kids, but she is unsure, and you're navigating her journey with her as she kind of comes to the conclusion that she doesn't want kids, and it's that society's pressure of making her feel like she needs kids, but that's not where her life is taking her. And I absolutely adore this book. Incredible, 100% keeping in this list. The next one is a book I don't think many of you guys would believe that was on this list, and that is I Heart New York by Lindsay Kelk. I absolutely adore this book. It's one of the books that when I first read it, I was like, this is going to be a new all-time favourite. And it has stayed that way. I have reread this 3 times now, 3 times. Anyway, I've read it more than once. It's such an escapism for me because it follows our main character, Angela, who has just broken up with her boyfriend and she wants a massive change in her life. So she ups and leaves randomly and goes to live in New York City, and she meets new men and she meets new friends, and it's basically just about Angela readjusting to this new life that she is now leading in New York. She becomes a writer that she's always dreamed about, and she realizes that her ex-boyfriend was actually holding her back from doing a lot of things that she wanted to do. And I absolutely adore this book. It is the first book in an 8-book series. There is I Heart London, I Heart Paris, I Heart Las Vegas, I Heart Christmas, I Heart Forever, I Heart Hawaii. Have I missed any? No, I haven't, because they're all stacked down here. And if I could only keep one of that series, it would 100% be the original one. I absolutely adore this one, so it was making the cut. I couldn't make this list without getting a Frederick Bachman book on there. And the book that I decided, because it was a tear up between Anxious People, A Man Called Uwe, which you guys know I love, and my favourite book of his, And Every Morning The Way Home Gets Longer and Longer. I think this book I'm keeping purely because of sentimental value, because it reminds me so much of my granddad, and unfortunately my granddad isn't around anymore, so it just has a lot of sentimental value to me. This book basically follows a perspective of a grandfather and a grandson, as the grandfather is suffering from dementia and he's slowly losing his memory, and he's trying to describe to his grandson what it's like, and he goes through loads of metaphors like, I'm lost in a park and I don't know which path to take, or that he has loads and loads of keys and he doesn't know which one to pick up. And it just made me like feel really connected to my granddad in the way of understanding what he might have been going through with dementia. So that is why this book is making the cut, because I just have this weird connection. Although I've read this book twice, the first time my granddad was still around and I enjoyed it and I understood the message and it was a good book. But on the second time round, after he'd passed, I waited a while until he passed to be able to fully immerse myself in this story and not be heartbroken by it. But when that time did come and I did reread this book, I just got so much more out of it and I just felt so connected to my granddad. And yeah, 100% this was the book that I was keeping for a Frederick Bachman book in this list. The next one is my 2021 favourite, and if you guys have been following my channel, you guys will know it. The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This book is one of my favourite romances of all time. I absolutely adored this book. It has fake dating in it. It basically follows our main character Olive. If you can see a pattern here, I clearly like main characters with the name Olive. There is a thing, if you guys have any books with main characters called Olive, hit me up in the comments down below. I'd like to read more, because clearly they do something for me and I give them all 5 stars. I've only read 2. But they have both been 5 stars. This book basically follows our main character Olive, and she is working in STEM and she's on a research project at university, and she starts fake dating a professor after she goes in for a kiss because she's working late one night at a lab, and she told her best friend Anya that she was on a date, but she wasn't on a date, so she had to pretend that she was on a date. So she ends up just smooching this professor, and apparently it's from a fan fiction of Ren, like Kylo Ren from Star Wars. I didn't know that before going in, but now I can't see anything other than Kylo Ren on the front cover. It looks exactly like him, but that, even if you're not a Star Wars fan, you don't need to be a Star Wars fan to read and enjoy this book. It is incredible. The romance is to die for, and oh, it's just incredible. I absolutely love it. And I do want to reread it soon, which is why it made this list, so I had the possibility to read it if all my other books randomly disappeared in front of my eyes. The next one, there was no doubt that this book was going on this list, because it's what made me like fall in love with reading in 2020 so much more. I've been reading since 2014 on and off. But in 2020, when I started my booktube channel, I really started to get immersed in stories and really start to broaden my horizons when it comes to which books I read. And this book was the first time that I read a book and I was like, holy moly, this writing is impeccable. All Boys Aren't Blue, All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson is a non-fiction memoir about George M. Johnson's life as they grew up black and queer in a minority community. And they actually have 2 books out now. The first one being, it's making my white balance horrendous. This one is about their time growing up from when they're 5 all the way off to university, and their other book, We're Not Broken, which came out just at the end of last year in 2021, is more focusing on their childhood surrounded by black joy. I'm just going to put it down because it's making my white balance awful, and about their family and their aunties and their uncles, and yeah, it's just incredible. But out of the 2 of them, I would keep this one just because it's the first book I read of them and made me fall in love with their writing and their storytelling, and just feeling so grateful that they're able to share their story with us. So yeah, definitely keeping this one. The next book, if I say this sentence, should be no surprise, but it's the book that got me into reading. And I was like, do I actually want to keep this book? Because I don't actually enjoy it as much as I did, but I have that sentimental nostalgic value to this book now, so I should probably keep it. But it's not like a book that I'm keeping because I want to reread it and reread it and reread it and reread it. It's literally for the fact that this is the book that got me into reading, and if it didn't feature on my bookshelves, I don't think my book collection would be complete within this 10 book collection if I didn't have this book on here. And that's Billy and Me by Giovanna Fletcher. This is definitely a sentimental keep because it is the book that got me into reading. When I read it, I didn't care what the appearance of the book looked like. So the pages are yellowing, the spine is cracked, and it just feels like such a loved book. And I do love this book, but not as much as I did. I've reread this 3 times now, and every single time I reread it, I understand the problematic issues with it more and more. So I do love this book for the fact that it got me into reading. It got me interested in adult romance and contemporary books. But as I've grown older, I've understood kind of the wrongs with this book. I do still love Giovanna Fletcher's writing style, which is why I was kind of toying up. Do I put her latest release on this list, which is Walking on Sunshine, or do I keep it with Billy and Me? And the reason I stuck with Billy and Me is because of sentimental value and the fact that it is signed personally to me, because this is one of the books that I met her with. So I took this book along, I met her, and she signed all my editions of her books. But this book, because it got me into reading, is the one that I had to keep. But if I could have like top 20 books I would keep if the rest of my collection disappeared, then I think Walking on Sunshine would also have made the cut, because I do love her writing and she means a lot to me. So yeah, and let's just keep on the Fletcher train and go with my next book, The Christmassaurus by Tom Fletcher, Giovanna Fletcher's husband. Can you tell I like the Fletchers? I adore the Fletchers. I love every single one of them. I think they're the most wholesome family. And Tom kind of focuses more on middle grade, and one of his most famous series is the Christmassaurus series. And I decided to keep this one just for the fact that it is one of the first middle grades I ever read. I have such a whimsical time reading these books that I just feel so immersed and invested in the Christmassaurus universe. And the fact that this also has a CD along with it, and I got it for Christmas one year, but my mum also surprised me with tickets to the Christmassaurus live stage show that they were doing for a period of time over one Christmas of 2018. And I stood outside for like 3 hours hoping that the Fletcher family would come outside the stage door, and they didn't. So this book has a lot of memories. I carried it into London to hopefully get signed. I didn't get it signed, but I still enjoyed the stage show, and I love this book, and it wouldn't be my collection if a Christmassaurus book wasn't featured, and this is personally my favourite one of the trilogy. But this book basically follows our main character, who is a little boy called William Trundle, and he is a wheelchair user, and he is absolutely obsessed with Christmas, and he is absolutely obsessed with dinosaurs. So one Christmas, he writes to Santa and he's like, I really, really want a dinosaur for Christmas. But eons ago, on the North Pole, a Christmas egg hatched, and they named him the Christmassaurus. It's the only dinosaur in the entire world because it got frozen under the ice, and the elves finally found this egg and it hatched, and the Christmassaurus was born. So Santa was like, oh, I'll make you a plush of the Christmassaurus because you love Christmas and you love dinosaurs. But the actual Christmassaurus gets so attached to the stuffed animal of him called Stuffy that he hides on the sleigh when Santa goes to deliver William his present, and William ends up meeting the actual Christmassaurus, and they have a truly magical adventure on Christmas Eve. And I think this book is essential for every kid, every child, every adult, every grandparent, every auntie, uncle, sister, sibling, anyone I think should read this book around Christmas, because it is the most magical experience. And it definitely had to make the cut because no Christmas is complete, in my opinion, if you haven't read The Christmassaurus. Now we're going to the complete end of the spectrum. I don't think you guys will probably be expecting this book, but I love this series. I just don't talk about it a lot on my channel, and that is the Scythe series by Neil Shusterman. And I couldn't not keep one of these books. It was a tough toy up between keeping the Thirst book or keeping Thunderhead, which is my favourite book in the trilogy, but I decided to keep with Scythe because the second book, Thunderhead, leaves on a massive cliffhanger that I don't think I'd be able to cope if I didn't then have the Told to read. So I went with Scythe, and this book basically follows 2 main characters, Citra and Rowan, and they are apprentices to a really famous Scythe. And in this dystopian world, a Scythe goes around to kill people because in this world, every natural cause of death is like being vanished. Like, you can't die of illnesses, you can't die in car accidents, you literally cannot die of natural things anymore. Even if you jump off a building, you go back into a hospital and you get revived. Like, you cannot die in this world. So the only way you can actually die is through an action of a scythe, and scythes have the power to glean people. And so then 2 apprentices, Citra and Rowan, shadow a scythe and they become scythes themselves. And it is I absolutely love the series. I think Neil Schussman does an excellent job in creating a world like this, which is so complex, but also kind of like realistic in a way that it could be utopian, but it's dystopian. And I love this whole series, and if you haven't read this series, then I highly recommend it if you like dystopian, sci-fi and fantasy sort of realm. And if you don't like that kind of genre and you like contemporary romances like me, I think you'll still really enjoy this series because I think it's beautifully written. The last book on this list, I didn't know whether I wanted to put it on here because I don't actually like the story. So this is 100% for sentimental value, that if this book just vanished one day, I would be really upset. And that is Winnie the Pooh. If you guys don't know, I have a little obsession with Disney. My favourite Disney character growing up from when I was very little all the way up to now, my favourite character is Winnie the Pooh. My first Valentine's Day with Mark is my long-term boyfriend if you don't know, got me the Folio Society edition of Winnie the Pooh. And if you didn't know, Folio Society is a beautiful bookstore based in the UK that does incredible editions of so many famous classic books. They're very short-lived. Books are only available for like a short period of time. And my boyfriend surprised me on our first Valentine's Day with the Winnie the Pooh edition of their book. And I'm in love. I don't like the story, but I love this edition, and Mark got it for me as one of the first ever books he brought me before I think he realised how obsessed I was with books and reading. But this is a stunning edition of Winnie the Pooh. I don't like the story. I don't even like the Disney film, but I love Winnie the Pooh as a character. So Winnie the Pooh in general holds a lot of sentimental value for me, that I could not keep this book. So although I don't love the story, it holds a lot of sentimental value and it is absolutely stunning. So yeah, this is the 10th book that I'm keeping on this list. And I'm pretty chuffed, to be fair, with the books I picked, because I've got a lot of variety depending on what mood I'm in to read. If I could only read these books off my shelves, I wouldn't be too upset. Like, there's a lot of variety. There's adult, there's middle grade, there's classics, there's dystopian, there's non-fiction, there's romance. I'm pretty happy with this stack, to be fair, and it's really heavy actually, because there's a lot of hardbacks, which I didn't realise. But yeah, these are all the books that I would keep in my collection if one day the rest of my collection that you can see around me vanishes and disappears for life. I would be interested to then create a list of books I could only ever read. For example, because Winnie the Pooh wouldn't be on this list if these were the only 10 books that I could read or for the rest of my life, basically like desert island discs, where you can only pick certain things to take to a desert island with you. I think that'd be a really interesting video, so I might do that one in the future, because the book list would be completely different to the ones that I have on today's list. But like I said, these books are very much more for sentimental value and for books I absolutely love and kind of represent me as a person and kind of me as a channel as well. So those are the top 10 books that I would pick if the rest of my book collection disappeared on me. Let me know what books that you would keep if you could only keep 10 in your collection. Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to know your answers. Thank you so much, Chloe, for giving me this idea, and I tag anyone who would like to do this. And yeah, I think that's about it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a massive thumbs up. Subscribe down below to see future content from me. I do monthly TBRs, wrap-ups, I do reading vlogs, themed reading vlogs, book recommendations. I pretty much have it all on here on this channel for you guys. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any more future content. And without further ado, I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.